Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Meet Praneeth.
So I didn't even think of that as an option. But when I got to Pace University in like around 2 years time, like all the Bollywood kids have a study abroad and then like go back and act in movies. That is not our life. I mean, I wish that was my passion. It was one of just calmness and agitation in getting the iPhone.
Hi Aditi, welcome to the channel. Meet Praneeth, and I'm very happy to have you here and share your story to everyone who is watching. And I know you are EB-1A recipient, if I'm not wrong.
B.
EB-1B recipient. Awesome. So yeah, we are here to listen to your story today and just get a glimpse of how you managed your track towards EB-1, and now you're a permanent resident, and what are the benefits you're enjoying from it. So are you excited to share your story?
Oh my gosh, yes, that's what I would say.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm excited to share my story.
So would you mind like just giving an overview of what you've been doing right now and a little bit of about yourself? That would be really great to start.
Before I do all of that, I have a question for you. Do you say meet Praneeth or do you say me Praneeth?
It's Meet Praneeth.
I'm like, what does he say? Is it meet Praneeth? Or is it meet Praneeth? I have to ask Praneeth about what he says. But yeah, it's always wonderful to talk to people who have gone through the same process that you have, because it's like being on a reality TV show, where if you have not been on the show, you don't know what it feels like to be on the show.
Right.
And in this case, it's not voted off. Actually, it is like voted off the island if you think about it, or be put in years of perjury is what I used to think about my drive to get a green card. And I do want to preface it by saying that my desire was to never get a green card and be a citizen.
Right.
Great, if it happens, it happens. But this need to get a green card was not driven by a motivation to belong to the US or being a green card holder. My desire to get a green card was heavily motivated by the fact that the other option was no longer feasible.
Makes
So
sense.
I've asked different friends of mine the same question. For example, Singapore. There are tons of Indians who go to Singapore, and Singapore is even more strict in giving permanent residencies than the US, if I may argue. You go to countries like Saudi Arabia, you can only have a 10-year visa. You cannot even have a path to citizenship. So if you compare the US to countries like this, one can argue that at least you can get a green card, at least you can become a citizen. So it should be better.
Right.
But to them, I say that look at the same countries that you have compared the US to, and look at the ease with which they can renew their temporary visa.
Exactly.
If US made it really easy to renew the temporary visa, and the temporary visa gave us ways to live as freely as a permanent resident, or at least close to it, I would have never gone for a permanent residency and at least chased it. Let's put it that way. I would have never chased the permanent residency as I did.
Yes.
So my desire, my drive, my single-minded focus in getting permanent residency was to not lap up the pleasure of being a green card holder, but to avoid the pain of being an H-1B holder. So that drove me to get a green card through the EB-1 process, because when I started my journey in the US, as do a lot of people who start their journey in the US, it always starts as an international student. You're privileged enough to access the American education and the Indian education that led us to global opportunities. So I do want to acknowledge that privilege that I had. But once you get here, you get a job here. You want to get a job here. If you have loans, you want to pay off those loans. It makes no sense to take a loan for USD and pay back in INR. That's just you're setting yourself up for failure. So for multiple reasons, one might look for getting a job in the US or stay in the US for a longer time than just coming here, studying, like all the Bollywood kids have a study abroad and then like go back and act in movies. That is not our life.
Right.
I mean, I wish that was my life, but it was. So I wanted to stay here and use my degree. And my degree was in a very unconventional field, a field that is not yet mature in India.
Mhm.
It is communication and media studies. So if you think about communication and media studies, to this day, I don't think my parents know what I did my PhD in. They still think that I have to name the closest thing. So the closest thing they know is mass communication. I
Mm.
did not get my PhD in mass communication. I got my PhD in interpersonal communication and communication.
Right.
So that field is very niche in India. There is no sustainable career as yet that I know of that you can
Mhm.
build it. And even if you do, you have to acclimatize yourself to the Indian education system to get a job in that framework. So I wanted to stay in the US to get a job because I didn't have any other option back home in India.
Mhm.
I didn't want to entertain it at the time. So I got a job as a professor in the US, and I got my H-1B cap exempt. I didn't even know that was a perk that I would get.
Right.
And I
Right.
know you talk about that in some of your videos
Mhm.
as well, the difference between H-1B and H-1B cap exempt.
Yep.
So I got my H-1B through that route, did not have to go through the lottery system,
Mhm.
which I'm very thankful for. Again, I had no say in that. That was just what the structure was.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when I got into a job, that was also the year when one of my friends who had come from India to the US
Mhm.
uh, to study microbiology in Stony Brook University.
Oh.
And he told me that he got his green card. I'm like, what? You got a
How
green
come?
card? You got a high school? What?
Yeah.
And then he told me about this very competitive um, way of getting your green card through something called EB-1. I didn't even think that I asked him what EB-1, I mean, what EB-1 was. I just said,
Mhm.
how did you qualify? And he said that he had to get letters of recommendations from these big people and show his research impact. And I was almost fired from my research program. So I was like, I have zero chops in this game. So I knew that I'm not like him. One, I'm in communication, he's in microbiology and cancer research. So
Right.
that's strike one against me. Strike two is he had other professors to vouch for him. My professors were ready to fire me from the program, so I'm not going to be able to go to them.
Right.
And number three is I didn't have as much research as he did, so I didn't even think of that as an option.
Mhm.
But when I got to Pace University in like around 2 years' time, I think one of my friends or my sister
Mhm.
said, "Hey, you need to tell your university to get your conversation started about green card." So I
Mhm.
did, but they put me in EB-2. As every employer will first put you in EB-2. Nobody is choosing to put you to EB-1 unless you
Exactly.
ask. So that's how I got my priority date through EB-2. Had
Mhm.
to negotiate that as well. So in every step of your immigration process, the number one advocate you need to be, or
Mhm.
the number one advocate you want by your side in your
Mhm.
immigration program is not a lawyer, it is yourself. Uh,
Exactly.
as long as you're not speaking up, other people are not just going to come and give it to you. If they do, great. You
Yep.
are in a planet that none of us belong to because the norm is you need to ask.
Yes.
Um, so I did that, and then my sister progressively kept asking me, "Well, go for EB-1A," and I had so much imposter syndrome, I didn't even want to start up the conversation. So I delayed it up until 2019 when I found, listen, this is getting ridiculous because the last time I had to renew my H-1B, there were so many troubles. I want to get out of the system once and for all. So I got the buy-in of my university in 2019. Then COVID hit, and that conversation went down the drain.
Mhm.
And then I again had to initiate that conversation in 2020. That's the time when they said yes. And I
COVID
started
period.
yeah, and I started working with the attorney to work on my profile. All of a sudden, she ghosts me in 2021. I follow up for 7 months,
Wow.
all the while building my profile. Everything came together in November of 2021.
Wow.
The attorney filed for my EB-1 on December 7th, 2021, and within 11 days, I got the approval of
Mhm.
my EB-1. And I still remember what I was doing when I got that approval notice. I
Mhm.
was in Disney World in Florida, and I was watching The Grinch. And for that day, the Grinch did not steal Christmas. The Grinch gave me my Christmas because my I-140 was approved, and
Right.
within 4 months, I had my green card in hand.
Wow. So like you're in Disney World, you're enjoying and you get this news. So what was your reaction like? Did you jump out of your seat or was like,
Oh,
oh, this is like
just
amazing?
the disbelief of it all, right? Like the disbelief of it all that, oh, does this mean what I think it means? Like, am I getting to? It's like you have been given a life sentence of 25 years, and this is your 24th year, sixth
Yeah,
month. You're like, am I getting free in another couple of months? The
right,
disbelief.
right.
I honestly was in, I just, here's what it is. It's going to sound very anticlimactic at this point. It's going to sound very pompous at this point. I was like, of course, this is approved because I had gone through hellfire before that. I had gone through hellfire before that because I knew I could not have put anything more than
Mhm.
what I put in my profile. Like, if it gets rejected with this, then I have no idea how else to get it approved
Exactly. Yeah,
because
you
I had
tried
done
your
everything and then some. So was that, what was my reaction? It was one of just calmness
mm,
and
relax.
agitation in getting the I-485, like the next steps done. So I was supposed to come back on, we were just getting into the holiday season last year this time.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a very small window where I could just get that medical exam in, put that I-485 done,
Mhm.
so things could get started in 2023.
Right.
And I rebooked my flight with some points that I had through Spirit Airlines. That should tell you the desperation. Came back to New York, went to my attorney's office, filled out the paperwork,
Mhm.
got all the vaccination jabs that I had to,
Yep.
just like give
Yep.
me all of it,
Right.
and just like get this done with. So
Yeah, get the ball
that's
rolling.
what
Yeah.
my mentality was like. Please, like for the love of God, khatam karo. So that's my story.
It's amazing. That's and like you'll be surprised. I got my approval on 30th November 2021.
Ooh,
So like
oh,
7 days before you filed yours, I got
ah!
the approval. So that's so
Isn't
amazing.
that
So we have
funny? Oh
some
my
connections there.
God. Did you do premium processing or did it come after
Yes.
a couple of,
So
yeah?
I think my came on the 13th day, yeah, if I'm not wrong. So I was like very nervous. Like it's 13 days. Like you is USA is going to say RFE or something is coming on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then finally it was like my update was really interesting because the first update that came on 13th day was your name has been updated. I was like,
Mm.
well, what happened to my name? Like why the name is being updated and all that. So I said, okay, well, something is going on, something is happening, that's good.
Yeah,
And then after 2 hours, like I was about to go to sleep because it was like I was in India with my
yeah.
parents.
Oh, you
Yeah.
live in India. Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, it's almost 11 now. Let's sleep. Let's see. 14, they will have some news. And then suddenly there was a pop on my phone saying that, well, your case is approved.
Wow.
Okay,
How
wow.
did you feel? How did were you amidst your parents, like
I
in
think I think it was a very similar reaction. I was feeling very calm. I was like, well, it's done and dusted. The next steps
yeah,
are in control because we know what we want to
yeah,
provide and
yeah,
how
yeah.
to provide.
There's also still a sense of disbelief. I'll tell you this though.
Mhm.
Every time I leave the US and I come back and I give my green card to the officer, I still have a feeling like, wait a minute, something has been updated in your green card. You're disapproved again. I still have traumatic nightmares every time I go, and I'm like, please, for the love of God, like just let my green card work. It's like, uh, it sounds crazy, but honestly, that's the process that I've been through to get
Exactly.
it, so
Exactly.
that there is still a continued sense of disbelief, a continued sense of a potential of loss. Let me put it
Exactly.
like it sounds very morbid, but your brain starts working differently once you've gone through this very gruesome process.
And I think some of it also comes from the reports or the news that you hear that well someone came on H-1B and they were deported or they were
Yeah, yeah,
questioning and all that. So you always have that fear in mind that something's going to happen and that
that's
is a
right.
bad thing that's going to happen, right?
Something's gonna happen.
Uh,
Yep.
so like I traveled I think internationally two times on my green card. I was like little hesitant in the first time. Well, what will happen? Like would they
Yeah.
ask me questions? Like
Yes.
but it was a seamless process. I think
It's
once
so
you,
seamless.
yeah. So I think the next question that I have for you is like you were a professor, and I think now you are working for a company, if I'm not wrong.
UX researcher, yeah. So I'm a user experience researcher at a tech company.
So how's the transition like from academic uh, background to going for a technical background, or let's say a company or industry background? So how does that
Yeah.
feel?
Well, there are two parts to this, right? So the first part is just skill transfer, that you're a professor, you're a researcher in the academic context. How do you sell yourself
Yeah.
in the industry context? So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is you're an H-1B
Mhm.
professor, cap exempt.
Yeah.
How do you transfer over to a four cap
Yeah.
industry? Because,
Exactly.
well, now you were in a non-profit as at a university, now you're going for a for-profit. Well, I learned it the hard way, because last year in August is when I decided to look into UX research seriously and transition into
Mhm.
UX research.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, like this should tell you, Pranit, or for people who are listening, that there is, as much as you think you know immigration, there will be some curveball that you don't know that might derail the plans that you were laying forward.
Oh,
So that was for me, where I thought, well, I mean, yeah, I have my H-1B. I'm just going to get a job at a industry job, and my H-1B is just going to transfer over. And I was talking about transitioning into the industry to a friend of mine who also got her PhD, and then transitioned into data science. So she changed her field and her discipline.
altogether. Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, that's great that you are transferring. Well, like, is the H-1B transferring? Have you looked into that?" I'm like, I never even asked that question. I don't even, like, that was not even in my radar.
Right.
And lo and behold, it would not transfer. So here I was, waiting for my decision from the university if I got tenure or not, still working on my EB-1 profile, not knowing that just because I get a job, I'm going to be able to take it or not,
Mhm.
and trying to transition into industry research from academic research. So, like, three things of which I had no control over were going on in my life.
Right.
And I was putting in equal amounts of effort on each. So it was not 33%, 33%, 33%. It was 100%, 100%, 100%
Hmm.
for every one of those, with 0% guarantee. When I tell you that I have never felt so powerless in my life, uh, the way I felt in 2021,
Right.
because I had no control over anything that was happening in my life. All I could do is put one foot in front of the other, in front of the other, in front of the other, hoping that something would happen. So that was my transition to the industry.
Right. And I think we'll definitely get to this probably at the end of our conversation of how green card has alleviated some of your pain,
Oh,
or let's
so
say, right?
many,
So,
so many.
and open new avenues or let
Hmm.
doors for you. Like
Hmm.
for me, like I was really when I got green card, I was very happy that, well, now I can do some things which I always wanted to do without any
Yeah,
restrictions, right?
yeah,
Uh, and it's not always about uh, going after the money. It's something
that's
about
right.
passion. Like you want to do something just
That's right.
passion for it.
Yeah. There's
So
something to
yeah.
say about human free will, right? Like, there's a different, like, do you want to go and jump out of the bridge?
Mhm.
Well, probably not. But if somebody tells you you cannot, it's illegal. You cannot do this. You cannot do that. You can't live like this. You can't do that. That becomes such a draining force in your life, where,
Exactly.
because you're not allowed to do a lot of things,
Mhm.
that cannot becomes into I cannot, right?
Yeah.
Like, the system says I
Exactly.
can't
Exactly.
versus I have lost the ability. So by the
Exactly.
time you gain it, right, that, like, and I know this from your videos, that the median age of an Indian national getting their green card has a difference of 10 years
Yeah,
between
from China.
other
Yeah.
countries. So, like,
Exactly.
the kind of energy you have in your system, or the kind of risk shock force that you have in your system as a 25-year-old versus a 35-year-old versus a 45-year-old
Exactly.
is very, very different, right? So by the time you're 45, you're set in your ways, you have more risk aversion.
Right.
Just the spirit of life is being sucked out
Right.
of you.
Yeah.
It changes your DNA, and I'm not even saying this loosely. It truly does. And look at me, I'm still under so much fear when I enter the US.
Mhm.
That will take a lot of unlearning because if it
Yeah.
didn't happen in one day, it's not going to go away in one day.
That's exact. I think, yeah, it will take time for, like, it for the, as I explained, the first trip was, I was nervous, like, well, if something was gonna go wrong, or what will happen at the port of entry. Like, the port of entry was kind of a very big thing at
I
when you were
know, I
in
know.
HW.
Isn't it like such a disbelief? And they just like, okay, welcome back. I'm like, sir, you don't want to ask about my second grandfather? Like, what do you, you don't want to ask about my family history or what blood type I have? No,
Right.
you just like walk through. The sense of disbelief is actually very real.
Yeah. And coming, like, we were talking about porter entry and all that. So can you give a little bit of insight of what was your journey before coming to United States? Like, I know the first day in United States would be whole lot of stories, right? A lot of things
Mhm,
happening, a lot of change from India coming to United States. But
mhm,
what was it that motivated you to come to United States for the first time, and like for college, or for, let's say, for master's, PhD?
mhm.
What was the background?
Oh my God, wait for the most anticlimactic story ever because I'm going to give that to you. The reason why I came to the US was my sister, and not because I came for her. I
Mhm.
came because she wouldn't shut up about it. Like she got married for the longest time, for however long I know my sister, I know that it was her dream to come to the US.
Wow.
She took the SAT, couldn't come to the US.
Mhm.
Something happened, like there was a whole lot of family drama also because my uncle was here.
Right.
Indian families, you'll have a token uncle in the US or a token aunt in the US all the time. So there
Right.
was some kind of family drama there.
Mhm.
All of it resulted in her not being able to go to the US. I had a really good life back home in India. I had a great set of friends.
Mhm.
I loved being the hooligan that I was back home, of like cutting class and like having fun with my friends. I had no itcha of coming to the US. Like that was not even on my radar. But my
Wow.
sister got married in 2005 and she had a baby in 2009.
Mhm.
And this was also the time that I was getting my master's in computer science. And
That
I
was
had,
in India?
huh?
That was in India, right?
Yeah, I was getting my bachelor's and master's in computer science, and my sister had a baby in the US, so she was in Michigan at that time. So she got
Oh,
married here too. So she came to the US one way or another.
right.
Um, so she came to the US and now she is doing really good. Like talk about H4 wives changing their life around. Man, she is an example of that, and she's currently getting her MBA in Raw School of Business, uh,
Wow.
along with a job, along with two kids, and she has a job on lock with one of the big four companies. So it's incredible what she has done with what she has been given.
Right.
I, on the other hand, no such ambitions. I wanted to quit school after class 12. I'm like, this is pointless. But somehow, this is coming from a professor. Um, so I never wanted to continue school, but I also equally did not want to do a job.
Mm.
Where I'm like, okay, how can I maximize my time not doing anything? Let's just continue school. So
Right.
when I came to the US in 2009, my sister, she told me, well, what are you going to do with your life? And I'm like, I don't know, we'll figure something out.
Right.
And she said, listen, if you want to get a degree in communication, I know you've been crying about it.
Hmm.
You are currently in computer science. You clearly don't like that. While you are here, why don't you email some of the professors in communication PhD programs or master's programs and have a
Right.
conversation with them and see if you can transfer over? And that's exactly what I did.
Right.
Since I was already here in Michigan, I emailed a couple of professors and I said, hey, I'm a prospective student. Would you be cool to meet up? I went
Right.
and met them and I said, I have a background in computer science.
Right.
Will I be a good fit? They said yes. I went back home, took GRE, took my TOEFL. 1 year later, I was in the US
With
at a
PhD.
PhD program.
Wow.
And it was not the PhD program that I wanted to be in, but it was also a PhD program that gave me funding.
Mhm.
So whilst I was there getting my PhD, I was also looking to transfer my credits to the university that I actually wanted to go to, and that was Michigan State University.
Okay.
Conveniently, it was just 60 miles away from my sister, so I could like sneak out and go to her place every other weekend, get my laundry done, get some food. So it worked out for me. That was my journey in the US. No innate, I want to live the American dream.
Right.
No, I want to work for corporate America.
Mhm.
None of that. It was truly because my sister kept insisting that I come here and
Right.
my apathy toward doing a real job back home.
Right. And the transition from computer science, like it's a big transition from computer science to
Yeah.
international communication or studying communication via PhD route, because that's like you're doing research, you're publishing papers,
Hmm.
you're defending your research and
Yeah.
whatnot. So how was that transition? Like, I know you were interested. You told me this before that you were interested in doing this, and
Hmm.
you were fully motivated about it. But like that transition from a tech person to more studying the communication,
Yeah.
understanding how to communicate and how to let's say pitch your ideas. And I'm just trying to give a scenario. So how that happened? Like what was it
Mm.
like? How, was it tough? Was it easy? Was it like, well, I have to now do it
You
because
tell
I'm
me.
enrolled in
You
it?
tell me. You tell me. It was, oh my God, it was something else. It was not tough from the beginning. Let me just preface it by saying that, but it became progressively tough.
Mm,
Uh, my decision of going for a PhD, again, I just told you I did not want to study. I wanted to come to the US to get a master's. And I thought, okay, I'll just study communication because I like it. And I should also say I hated computer science. I just didn't have a bone of computer science in me.
right.
I decided to go study computer science because that's the closest to engineering that I would ever get.
Mm,
Uh, and, and I got to study in St. Xavier's College. My goal was never to get into computer science. My goal was to study in St. Xavier's College. And out of 5 programs that I applied to in St. Xavier's College, the only one that took me was computer science. I truly tried not to go down that route, but God had other plans.
right.
Um, so yeah, I was getting my PhD, master's in computer science, and I wanted to come to the US for a master's, shortest route possible. But my sister said, "Listen, Dad is not going to pay one, and he's for sure not going to pay for your whimsy of getting a master's in communication, that too from computer science. It is not going to happen. It is as sacrilegious for me to have made that shift as to have gotten married through love marriage without going for any marriage. It's as sacrilegious, if not more. So real ones are gonna get that reference. So I wanted to make that transition. My sister said, "Listen, so if you have to get a degree in communication, do PhD
Mhm.
because that way you don't have to pay a buck, and you can quit after getting a master's. So go for an MS
Yeah.
PhD, just get your master's and leave." And I'm like, okay. Unfortunately, the programs that I had applied to, they were not MS PhD, they were just PhD. So you had to get a PhD.
Or
Now, the
you
good thing was, I got a very soft launch into communication because Bowling Green State University